Auric Consulting presents the Aurical podcast with Anton Marshall. Hello and welcome. You're on the Aurical with Anton Marshall. Today we're talking to South African punk artist and musician Cami Scoundrel, who's on the line with us from the USA. Cami, welcome.
Hey Anton, how you doing?
Very well, thanks. Where are you in the US right now?
I'm in West Philadelphia at the moment.
In West Philadelphia, born and raised. All right. No, well, not quite.
Raised at all.
Anyway, you are actually in the USA because you were invited there to speak at an event that was being held related to issues of music and culture and punk. Tell us a little bit about what that event was and what you were going to speak of.
Well, the event was supposed to be about marginalized punk groups around the world, so focusing, but mostly with speakers from Philadelphia on LGBT punk groups and queer punk groups and Latino punk groups and black punk groups around Philadelphia. I was asked to speak about my South African punk scene, which itself is a marginalized punk scene, being from Africa and not getting much exposure. I chose to talk about the punk bands that I know and grew up with. So my speech pretty much entailed playing songs from those punk bands and then explaining what the songs were about, to put it simply.
Okay, and I understand that the response to this was not what you were expecting.
No, not at all.
All right, can you tell us a bit about what happened?
Well, I think what happened, I'm still coming to terms with it, was that they were expecting me to firstly be black or of color, being from Africa, and to be speaking about black punk groups in South Africa. The problem came in that a lot of the speakers are involved in a movement called Dismantling the White Boys Club, seeing as punk has quite a strong history of being made by white boy punk rockers.
Right.
Yeah, my speech pretty much involved a lot of music from white boy punk rockers, and it kind of put me on the back foot a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, but we also played a short clip of the Punk in Africa documentary filmed by Keith Jones and Dion Maas, and
Yes.
I was on a panel with Ivan Cady from National Wake, who were a multiracial punk band in Johannesburg back in the 80s during the apartheid era. And what was taken from the small clips of the documentary that we showed was that, what came up as an argument was that we were using the voices of black people as objects in a white narrative, and people got quite touchy about that subject.
Yeah, this seems like something that well, firstly, that's a complicated response, and then a complicated position to be in for yourself. How did you? I don't think you can speak for Ivan necessarily, but for yourself, what was your reaction to this? To their reaction?
Well, the reaction that we got was quite an attack. So, having been quite tired after 36 hours in transit and just arriving in America and haven't slept, my reaction to it was quite knee-jerk, to say the least. Yeah, it was a bit strange, and I was taken aback and didn't expect to be, I guess, what's the word? Ostracized for my position as a white girl, which is seen as a form of privilege, which is understandable, or a position of privilege, and they didn't think that it was my place to speak about politics in South Africa because of my position of privilege. So it was, I guess, a reaction I wasn't really expecting.
Okay.
And could have possibly foreseen had I known, but also the conference organizer hadn't foreseen that reaction, which was maybe a little nearsighted on her behalf.
what do you take from that, coming out of that experience, and probably on your way back to South Africa now? Has that changed anything about the way you feel about your craft and what you do and how you do it?
It's kind of given me a lot of thought and perspective on the punk scene that I'm involved in, but at the same time, I don't think their reaction was justified. I don't think the punk scene in South Africa kind of does speak from a place of privilege, but we're more a group of people that are seeking equality and justice and looking for ways to be less divided on topics of race and class. So, I don't know, it opened up a lot of interesting discussion. I started posting some Facebook posts and getting people's ideas and reactions about racism and privilege, and it's been quite an eye-opening experience. I don't think it'll change the way I view my craft or act on my craft or carry on creating music. I think it'll only give me a stronger perspective from which to work on the subjects that we're dealing with and issues, and try and incorporate that more into my music to try and create a less racial platform. I don't know, does that make sense?
Yes, sure.
Yeah.
Completely honest. Okay, so from what you were watching and listening to from the other speakers at this talk, what were the kinds of things that you found interesting, if any at all, about the theme that they were going for, and what was it that they were saying?
Oh, just thinking back, we watched, I think the documentary was Takwator. It's a documentary about Muslim punks, but also created by a white guy who came up with this concept of an imaginary band, and then suddenly bands all over Islam started catching onto this concept of it and starting to play like punk rock music and forming the scene around it. But at the same time, this guy was also pinned down as being white and privileged, and eventually people came to terms with him as being kind of cool because he was a cool guy. But I found that kind of interesting, just that perspective of the white narrative. It's something that I haven't really come across in my studies of punk.
It certainly seems like there might be a room for a conversation on that. I have no idea the kinds of things or how to get involved in a concept, but hopefully when you do return to South Africa, we can have a further conversation about what exactly all this means and what this means for people like yourself and for the punk movement here in South Africa, if it means anything at all. Or do you feel that as the punk scene in South Africa, it needs to find its own way and not necessarily be dictated to in terms of approach by external voices?
I definitely wouldn't want to see the South African punk scene going the way that the American punk scene is going, because the punk scene here has become quite factionalized, and there's lots of different groups who are looking at different views and perspectives, whereas in South Africa we've kind of got like the Soweto rock revolution happening, where like white and black bands are coming together and playing in Soweto and trying to like bridge this boundary, whereas in America it seems like people are just trying to get more divided in a sense. So yeah, I don't think we should look to America as a point of reference to how we should be growing the scene.
Okay, so just in conclusion, you when you get back here, I've been checking out some of your Facebook notices. When you get back here, you have some activity planned, or you are aware of some more activity planned, and things are just carrying on.
Yeah, gonna carry on just making punk gigs and keeping the scene going, and we've got a show happening on the 2nd of May. We've got TCYIC coming up from Josie, who are a Soweto punk band. That acronym stands for the Come In Your Face. I think they've kind of put it back down to an acronym for various reasons.
Of course. Hey, yeah, that's punk,
But also maybe starting to incorporate black bands who not necessarily genreified as punk, but have punk attitudes, like The Brother Moves On and Meet the Veggies and Blackjacks, who all consider themselves to some extent to be punk in attitude, and maybe starting to work towards making the scene less about the genre of punk and more about the attitude of equality that South African punk bands have always strived for since the 80s, with bands like Power Age and National Wake. Yeah.
Yeah, Cami Scoundrel on the line from West Philadelphia. Cami, I do hope that when you do get back here, I know you write often and you publish to the web as well. It seems like a very interesting experience that has happened, and I hope you do write about it or talk about it some more. It's certainly a conversation I think that can be launched into here, there, and everywhere, so to speak. Thank you for your time today.
Cool. Thanks, Anton. Thanks for having me.
You have been listening to the Aurical podcast, brought to you by Auric Consulting, www.auricconsulting.co.za.